the senator, while indoctrinated, could not explain his toxicity.
You should not listen to men's rights advocates if you want to know what they have to say.
Number ZZ9 plural Z alpha. Number ZZ9. I said I've never seen such idiots in all my life.
That's a lot of this,
Yeah, couldn't agree more.
Like a furry torpedo to the jugular. This is Honey Badger Radio. Radio with bite.
But the senator, while indoctrinated, could not explain his toxicity.
You should not listen to men's rights advocates if you want to know what they have to say.
Number ZZ9 plural Z alpha. Number ZZ9. I said I've never seen such idiots in all my life.
That's a lot of this,
Yeah, couldn't agree more.
Like a furry torpedo.
Hello, and welcome to HBR Talk 340, Gravy Train Derailment. I'm your host, Hannah Wallen, here with the personification of perceptivity, Mike Stevenson, and nonsense annihilator, Lauren Brooks. And tonight we're bringing our slog through the Bafia's pathway to involving the U.S. and a war between two foreign countries to a conclusion. This is going to be a weird night. We're not going back into the Marco Polo report, and partly it's because it really gets into a lot of how when you have somebody like Hunter Biden, who is kind of a hedonist, like that's an understatement of the year, right? That individual is then vulnerable to being bribed using things that we aren't going to highlight on our show. So we're getting out of the Marco Polo report, because that's a lot of what was discussed in it was how China and Ukraine used hookers and blow to bribe the son of the president. But the relevant information that we've been building up to is available in a bunch of other articles. So, and like I said before, I honestly do not care if the man snorted half the cocaine in the world. I don't care if he smoked crack. I don't care how many girls he fucked. None of that's important to me, right? What's important is what happened between the businesses he was involved in, the government in Ukraine, the Chinese government, and the Russian government, and that was quite dangerous, big threat to the United States in some ways. And we're starting with very old news, although some of the news that we've dealt with has been older. So you'll have to bear with me on this a little bit. Do you remember back in the conclusion, sort of the last half of the pandemic crisis, that Tulsi Gabbard got called a Russian asset for talking about biological research labs, also known as biolabs, in Ukraine, and how, because of the recent attacks at the time, because Russia had just attacked, had just started, their campaign of physical aggression in Ukraine. She got panicked over those labs and made some comments that, what if they bombed one of these labs? What if they took one of these labs? What if they released something from one of these labs? And of course, she was initially accused of being a Russian asset for spreading panic. Then the narrative switched to, well, she said they were bioweapons labs, which she didn't, and she had to clarify her comments, but she also demanded an apology here. So this article, Tulsi Gabbard clarifies Ukraine biolabs remarks after widespread outrage. This came out in March of 2022. And the gist of it here, and we're going to kind of rush through this because this is just the beginning. She had initially made the comments, I believe, during a debate where, she was on stage with several other people. And so she had to clarify then in a series of tweets here. It says, in a series of tweets on Monday, the 2020 Democrat presidential hopeful responded to the fierce criticism she has received for a video about the threat of Moscow targeting U.S.-funded biolabs in Ukraine and spreading deadly pathogens. Her video, posted on March 13, was accused of echoing false claims made by the Kremlin to justify its invasion of Ukraine, that the country is housing labs funded by the U.S. military that are developing chemical or biological weapons. Now, Russia did say that. And we'll get to that. So on Twitter, Gabbard explained that she doesn't believe there are biological weapons labs or biological weapons in Ukraine, as Russia would have it, but was expressing concern about the fact that there are labs researching pathogens in an active war zone. And she added here, she explained what they were. This was basically more gain-of-function research, right? We're gonna look at these pathogens and see if they can be used that way. See if they can be made worse, and then we're gonna see if we can cure them. That's the claim as to what gain-of-function research actually is. So, if a nation is at war and they have a lab that has, some horrific plague that actually kills 90% of the population or more when it comes into contact, and they're researching it, and they're researching for maybe a cure, with the idea that some natural progression of evolution of this thing it is going to escape or happen in nature, and they want to be able to cure it. And then somebody comes along and in the course of a war, in the course of aggressive weapons attacks on an area, blows a hole in it, or releases it by accident. They enter and they start opening shit, and then somebody gets infected and leaves. The next thing you have is this release of plague, right? So this is what we're going to start with today. We're not going to go over this article in depth, but here is this is sort of the first clue that we had. And they went hard against this. There were just dozens and dozens of news articles, quote, debunking, end quote, Tulsi Gabbard's alleged claim about bioweapons labs. And then shortly thereafter, there were articles about what a threat it is, right? The Department of Defense confirmed earlier this month that the U.S. has invested $200 million in Ukraine since 2005 to support 46 Ukrainian laboratories and their research into disease threats as part of the Biological Threat Reduction Program. So these were DoD-funded biolabs researching deadly viruses.
$200 million doesn't even seem like all that much. With a modern day perspective.
Yeah.
How much is it now? Like $200 billion? Is it approaching $1 trillion that have been pumped into Ukraine?
So much.
In the form of some kind of resources or other.
It's huge because they're sending billions of dollars at a time. So yeah, it's got to be in the trillions. And I remember that, like, this isn't really that much, because remember that the amount of money that Biden was holding over the heads of officials in Ukraine to get them to stop investigating Burisma was $1 billion. You're not getting the $1 billion, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we're talking shitloads of money. So I remember, though, her coming out. She was very outraged over this. This is like one of the few times where I saw her genuinely look emotional when she was talking about the way the media treated her. And she said, "You've called me a treasonous liar for simply stating the fact that there are over 25 U.S.-funded biolabs in Ukraine, which, if breached, would release and spread deadly pathogens across the United States and the world." Gabbard said in a video posted on Twitter on Monday. Now, bizarrely, you claim that securing these labs, or even calling for securing these labs, is treasonous and will lead to a loss of life, when the exact opposite is obviously true. So she was asking Romney for an apology on that. But what we can glean from that is, this was a significant development. The fact that there were these labs, right, and they were a threat, and they were vulnerable, right at the start of this war. But before we get into the rest of it, there's your teaser. We got to do what we got to do, guys. As always, Honey Badger Radio.
We didn't do what we had to do. I thought we did what we had to do.
No, we didn't do what we had to do. As always, Honey Badger Radio.
That was the longest cold intro ever. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I know. This is out a smorgasbord of thought-provoking discussions. This was going to be a hell of a discussion, guys. And as experiences both recent and long past have demonstrated, the provoked thoughts are fighting back. They've made it clear that for people like us, relying on third-party payment platforms like Patreon to fund our work is treading on thin ice, or building our house in the path of a rapidly growing wildfire. In light of this, we strongly encourage our supporters to switch at least their support for us to feedthebadger.com, the most stable way to help us out. And if you want to tip us directly instead of relying on any social media platforms tip jar, the link for that is feedthebadger.com/justthatip. And with apologies to Meredith G last week, I missed your super chow, so I'll read it now. This was another clue. We were talking about how sometimes I mess up the numbers on the show. But this was another clue for me this week. And this is something that actually, Meredith, I use these when I'm trying to keep track of what show it is. Meredith G gave us $5 last week and said, HBR Talk 339, honey for the Badgers. And so that way, I have read it. And then, sorry again about missing it. I genuinely didn't see it till after the show. So, but yeah, as always, the same risk applies to our social media platforms. I still haven't gotten myself banned on either X or Facebook, but I've come pretty close a couple of times, and I've had some pretty weird shit happen with my account, so there you go. And I know that I'm not the only one, too. Like, Brian's original account is still banned on X, even now that things have, yeah. So, you should definitely further provoke the thought police by following our thought-provoking discussions, tracking our activities on honeybadgerbrigade.com, where you can find your way to all of our content, as well as a link to feedthebadger.com in the drop-down menu at the top of the page. So if you can only remember one of the two sites, honeybadgerbrigade.com will lead you to both. So there we go. There's our spiel. But my point in going over this part is actually going to be, I've got a whole list of news stories here that we're going to blow through really quickly. So October 25, 2022, AP releases an article. Russia seeks UN probe of claims on Ukraine biological labs. Right? And they've got this this just very it's not as brief as some AP releases here, but the gist of it is Russia went to the UN Security Council they in a meeting to request that they would establish a commission to investigate its claims that those biolabs that were investigating viruses, the gain-of-function labs, that those were violating the convention prohibiting the use of biological weapons. And this wasn't necessarily... they didn't cite anybody talking about this publicly. They didn't cite Tulsi Gabbard. What they did was demand an investigation, right? And of course, there was, at the time that this happened and at the time that Tulsi Gabbard came out, there were all these news stories debunking the biolab's claim. And it was a massive, orchestrated, they had the same wording for their articles, they had the same wording for their headlines, the same catchphrases and stuff, all of the usual details that indicate, that this is not organic, this is kind of orchestrated. And you had all these accusations that, the right is pushing this Russian narrative, right-wing Russian conspiracy theorists, blah, 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 at the same time as this was being demanded. And so you think about it, if you're in a room with somebody and that somebody has been in conflict with you for quite a while, and you start to see evidence, gosh, this person has a gun in their purse. They got a gun, you know. All right, let's see if she has a gun in her purse. Can we take a look and see if there's a gun in your purse? And the first thing that happens is all of her friends like circle around her and start, you can't accuse her of having a gun in your purse. This is a conspiracy theory. This is disinformation. You're lying. And nobody is willing to show you that actually it's pretty obvious there's no gun in the purse. You might even see the shape of a gun in the purse. Or they might say, well, it's not a real gun. It's a starter pistol. Right? Or a flare gun. Or this is just a squirt gun. There's nothing bad in it. What are you talking about? But you can't take a look. You can't investigate. And anybody who wants an investigation is obviously an asset for the guy who's asking for the investigation. How dare you? That's a little sus. Like, in my opinion, that's quite a bit sus. There shouldn't be anything in labs that are doing medical research that the UN couldn't go in and look at and oh yeah, this is just medical research. There's nothing bad going on here. Right? And yeah, with the gun in the purse thing, if it's in the United States, you know, for those of us here in the United States, that might actually be her legal right to have the gun in the purse. So she could even say that, look, it's not loaded. I have a legal right to this gun. You know, I'm not targeting you with it. You can't do anything about it. But no, if you're told that you can't look, you can't investigate, you don't have the right to know, and you would get suspicious at that point. You'd be like, why are you, you know, at this 4-H meeting carrying a gun? But for people outside the United States, 4-H is a kids club. It's an organization for farm kids originally, but a lot of kids are in it now, and they just do projects. When you have a county fair, it's usually run by people who are organizing those projects, the judging of those projects. So they might have animals or that they've raised, or they might have sewing that they've done, or I did photography projects as part of my 4-H participation. So there's a wide spectrum of things, farming and horticulture, all kinds of stuff. But it's all related to life skills later on, and it's a lot of fun. And it's thought of sort of as the alternative, like the Scouts do camping and those kind of life skills, and these are more domestic life skills as opposed to survival life skills. So it would be really weird to bring a gun there. Just nobody would want to do that. Yeah. His head, Death to Zionism, Feminism, and the Thin Blue Line says, is that poison in your pocket, or are you just happy to see me? I swear, it's a banana. But, yeah, so this is what we're looking at, right? There was, at that time, and I'm sure people remember these news stories, right? And even AP had this acknowledgement. Ukraine does have a network of biological labs that have gotten funding and research support from the U.S., but they are owned and operated by Ukraine and are part of an initiative called a Biological Threat Reduction Program that aims to reduce the likelihood of deadly outbreaks, whether natural or man-made. The U.S. efforts date back to work in the 1990s to dismantle the former Soviet Union's program for weapons of mass destruction. So maybe they might have been coming up for antidotes with, with antidotes for bioweapons from Russia, but that's not in the article. So of course, then we had. The labs are not secret. Philippa Lentsos, a senior lecturer in science and international security at King's College London, said in an email to the Associated Press in March, they are not being used in relation to bioweapons. This is all disinformation. And this was completely swept under the rug after this. This was this was pretty much, they didn't do much after this, but complained that Russia wasted their time asking for the investigation. So, at the same time, we're going to this Newsweek. There we go, top of the screen. How it ended up in the middle. We have a connection here. This guy just keeps coming up. He just keeps popping up everywhere. He's like whack-a-mole.
Herpes. He's like herpes.
Yes. It's like the whack-a-mole.
He's always there, always at the worst time, and it's always a reminder of some shit you know you shouldn't have done.
Yeah.
But you did it anyway. Thanks, Joe Biden.
Let's look at this old article about biolabs in Ukraine and a supposed Russian disinformation campaign about bioweapons and so on. Like, oh look, there's whack-a-mole. Yeah. So, and again, we're looking at, this is March 26th, 2022. It was published and updated in the same day. So, it was, let's go back to the Tulsi Gabbard, March 15 was when the article on her clarifying her comments about the biolabs happened. March 13 was when the original video came out. Right? AP comes out, and like, cause we're in October where AP had published about Russia, asking for an investigation. In between, we have Hunter Biden popping up. That stuff drives me nuts. I really wish they wouldn't do this. Like, I just want to read the news story, and I would like it to show in the window that I have open on my screen here. So I'm going to have to pull this down so you can actually see it. And there we go. All right. This is... Gosh darn it. Stop! There we go. Russia's assertion that President Biden's son Hunter was financing biological laboratories in Ukraine was based in truth, according to emails reviewed by the Post. This is the New York Post. A trove of emails on Hunter Biden's infamous laptop, the existence of which was exclusively reported by the Post in October 2020, found that he played a role in helping a California defense contractor analyze killer diseases and bioweapons in Ukraine. No bioweapons, guys. Totally no bioweapons, though. And, you remember when the laptop came out, we had all these guys from the Defense Department saying it was fake.
But are they not all pardoned now? So we can't even.
No, they're
you know,
their clearance was removed and their security was removed. I don't think all of them got pardoned. Some of them did.
Yeah.
And now we're in the process of signing in Cash Money Patel. You will have seen the clips from today. Dude is such a baller. I love him. And now, I don't know what's going to happen. I hope some things are going to get uncovered, or at the very least, people are going to get fired.
Yeah. The best thing that can happen, like, even if we don't see a single prosecution from this, which could happen, we could be completely disappointed if our goal is to get revenge on the individuals who brought us to this point. And trust me, I would be quite happy to see a lot of people go to jail because of this. The people that were involved, the people that lied to us, the people that gaslit us, the people that accused all of us of being, Russian disinformation assets and killing grandma by promoting disinformation during the pandemic and all that. Right. That's but and I get to have a big butt now because I put on a lot of weight. I would be happier to see the institutions that were used to do this reformed. The systems of actual disinformation, right? The liars, the cheats, the thieves, the crooks in charge of our government. I would be more happy to see them lose every bit of power they have based on, them being prosecuted and their methods being terminated. Not prosecuted, but them being their departments being eliminated, their agencies being torn down, their everything being pared down to nothing. I'm sure an investigation will lead to all kinds of pathways of corruption. This happened, that happened, these people were involved, this is what was done, this is how it was achieved or put together. This is what we need to change in government to keep this from happening again. And for me, that's my, not necessarily goal, but my wish, that at the end of the day, even if not a single person who was involved in the mass murder around the world, who was involved in the faking of this war and getting America involved and promoting corruption when they claimed they were eliminating it in Ukraine, if not a single one of those people goes to jail, I'll be happy if what the current administration does makes it so hard to do anything like this again that even if they end up out of power later on, the next group of people that comes into power won't be able to do this. Because that's when I say derailing the gravy train, I mean, if the tracks aren't there anymore, they can't steal the gravy. Yeah. They can't get it from point A to point B. And therefore there is no point in trying, right? And so that's what I want to see.
Yeah.
Yeah, Death to Zionism, Feminism, and the Thin Blue Line says the only way is for the Republic to unite and form a militia against the corruption. We've gone over in this particular little corner of Honey Badger Radio in the last year a couple of times, maybe multiple times, is the importance of localized militia. So I'm going to point this out. When we talked about the formation of voting rights, and we've gone through history from 800 years ago all the way, well, longer than that, but we've gone through history from pre-Magna Carta all the way up through the start of the United States, and we were getting into the start of Canada, on our way to the start of Australia. Had mentioned a few things. One of the things that struck me was the consistent presence throughout history of localized militia and its relation to conscription. So, remember when we talked about the feared, the localized militia during the 14th century, when voting rights weren't really a thing. There was Common Council and the king, and the Common Council was between the king and his barons, his lords, and some local representatives in various communities. And when there was war, or when there was any kind of conflict, when there was even police work that needed to be done, it was the feared, these elite groups of local men who were, they weren't necessarily soldiers per se, but they were like mercenaries. They were fighters. They didn't, their main thing may have been something else, but they policed the area. They did have fighting skills, and they had weapons that maybe everybody else didn't have. And you had sort of the knights came out of that, and the growth of military out of that, more organized military, is something that we also pointed out. And when we talked about the formation of the United States military, at the time of the Revolution, was entirely made up of men drawn from local militias. There was no Department of Defense. There was no Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines. Of course, there was no Air Force, right? That'd be kind of impossible. But in any case, there was no organization like that. There was a call to action, and there were people who answered. So the question here, Thalanox said, didn't at least some knights basically just patrol the roads and try to keep things safe for travelers? So we're going to have to, at some point, there was an article I saw in Chivalry that I really need to go find again and show, discuss it on the show. Knights were essentially the super soldiers of their time, right? The heaviest form of transportation available at that time was a wagon with horses. And owning a horse and being able to travel around in armor with a sword was the equivalent of being part of a tank brigade. So you're looking at, it'd be like if somebody owned a tank and they just drove up and down I-75 to make sure that the drug dealers using it as drug alley had a rough time getting through, and people didn't get robbed and murdered on the highway as often. So a lot of what they did, like, they weren't just running around like that. It was expensive, for one thing, and for another thing, it was grueling work. If you ever get a chance to go to a Renaissance fair where actual chainmail is on display, and you have the opportunity to just take your hands and pick up a chainmail shirt, do it. And then tell me what it would be like wearing that all day. Much less an actual solid iron or steel whole get-up. It would be insane how much work that was. Just staying on the horse would be hell. Like, that, and of course they did things for sport dressed like that. The men of the time period that did that, that's quite a feat. And the men that do it now, they're a little bit crazy, I think, but it's still pretty awesome. And it's quite a respectable endeavor. Like, they're not just playing around. They have to be very strong and extremely tough, and not just against being hit, in the jousts and stuff. That it's hot as hell, and this is taking place in the middle of summer, and they're inside a metal container. Right? So this is, I doubt they just wandered around doing shit like that. But yeah. So this was always, historically, military wasn't top down only like it is now. It was top down and bottom up. You had a cooperation between the people and the leadership. And today, what we have is conscription in the form of a no alternatives unless you accuse, or unless you claim to have a religious objection. in the United States, and that's not available in every country. But you can't, like, people used to be able to pay somebody else to take their place. There used to be different ways of ensuring that, people who are more capable were the ones that were doing the fighting, and so on. And today, it's set up to be indiscriminate, to force it on people against their will, and then we also have this huge, burgeoning, ever-growing force of trained fighters that don't really have a purpose unless we are under threat or at war, right? So you do kind of, it is beneficial, in my opinion, to change the system so that there is a much more consistent and deeper collaboration between our military system and local militias. And to the degree that if I were going to rearrange things, each individual state in the United States would have military bases where that state ran its military, and the federal Department of Defense would exist strictly for helping those states organize with each other and maintain continuity in what they were doing, instead of having the federal government be entirely responsible and then drafting people every time they want a military action to take place.
Here's an interesting question. When did machines become more valuable than men? Now, I don't even know what the answer to that is. You could spread it across centuries of material advancement, or indeed humanitarian advancement. I mean, we're talking about when men wore suits of armor into battle. That would suggest that men were so very valuable that you had to clad them in not just chainmail but plate armor. Mm-hmm. Imagine dragging around like plate armor all the time, on account of you being the most valuable military asset that a country could have. But we're in very different times now. We're in drone technology and all that, and so men don't need to wear armor anymore because they barely even go into battle. We have drones now to do all that. So now drones are wearing the armor, and we don't bother giving men the armor because men don't really matter. You have drones. So
well, we've outsourced that work to the robots, to the AI.
Well, and
so
we're still
speak.
treating men as disposable, though.
Yeah, and we're at the time where robots are very expensive. It'll cost you 70K for a humanoid robot that you can kick around your lounge room, and just you know the clip I'm thinking about. But
yes.
Yeah, we're at that point where we can afford robots, and they're not very good. So they can't quite replace males just yet, but soon enough they will be able to be. And once that happens, I mean the only value that's given to males in modern society is that they can fight each other for the honor of women. It started with chivalry, and it's still chivalry. But at what point are all of these combative jobs given to robots and drones and shit, and men are just left to be? I mean, if they're not allowed to defend their nation, and they're not allowed to interact with women. I don't even know where I started with this.
Well, it becomes a
point
question
where
of
I'm
what
going
men's
with
role
this.
becomes next, doesn't it? So, I mean, we've already treated men like they're disposable. And we've already treated... Like, when they talk about sending men into battle, they don't talk about them as men. They don't talk about them as people. They don't even talk about the possibility of injury. They refer to them by their clothing and by statistics. Boots on the ground, casualties, not the human end of it. That you know, people come back from war maimed, psychologically damaged to the point of losing the ability to function normally in society and have jobs and do ordinary things that they would normally do with no problem, right? And that's if they come back. If they don't, it may be because they were murdered, they were killed, or it may be because they were captured. And I want to remind people, younger generations may not be fully understanding of this because we're talking about their grandparents, and a lot of them didn't get to know their grandparents because of this, or their great grandparents for the Zoomers on down. I knew families when I was growing up that had a dad missing because he didn't come home from Vietnam, and nobody knew why. Like, they didn't know if he was captured, they didn't know if he was killed, they didn't know what happened to him. Right? There was a prevalent, very, it was like not an undercurrent, but very always there in the background, knowledge and understanding of missing in action. And there were movies about it, there was media about it and everything, but there were always little fundraising jars up on counters at places you would go shop, or there would be, times when the local motorcycle clubs would go on a run to raise money, and it was for sending people to Washington to beg Congress to continue investigating, or sending people to search for people who were missing in action, sending people to do research within what available information there was, and so on. And that was there for Generation X's whole lives, from the time we were little kids, or some of us before we were born, many of us before we were born. Clear on up, there are some of us who have known people that their parents never got answers, their moms never got answers on what happened to their dads. And in addition to that, there were other things that happened in Vietnam that a lot of people don't, like, everybody knows about Agent Orange. Everybody knows it was a poison that it was used to destroy vegetation, that was dumped indiscriminately on enemies because it did other types of damage as well. But what they don't know is that there were soldiers who were exposed to it, whose exposure to it was hidden, covered up. I happen to have a good friend whose father was one of those soldiers. They had him handling that shit without gloves or any kind of personal protective equipment, just dumping it out in buckets from a plane. So everybody that was involved got dosed, got splattered with it and everything. And cancer had hit that family like a scattergun. I don't know if there's anybody in the family, him, his wife, his kids, I don't know if there's anybody that hasn't had it. And they don't have an ancestral tendency toward that. So these casualties, these statistics that we keep hearing about when it comes to war. It's not numbers, right? It's not scoring, right? And yeah, birth defects came out of that as well. Death to Zionism, feminism, and the thin blue line gets me to read his name an awful lot, because he's got salient points. Yes, all of them, Phalanx.
I love that name, by the way. I love his name.
Yeah, but
the best name.
And this is what comes out of when we send our troops and our weaponry, and we have our military, our federally run military involved in a foreign country. These are the consequences that nobody ever talks about.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so when I say that it galls me to hear boots on the ground and casualties and all of the terms that are used to talk about war without ever mentioning the lives of human beings and how they are genuinely affected, you have to understand, and a lot of us have this sense about it in Gen X. We grew up watching our parents either remember almost having to go, or our parents or our friends' parents suffering from PTSD, suffering from war injuries. All of us knew amputees. All of us knew people who were so far in their heads that you just didn't fuck with their memories. You didn't ask questions, because you just didn't. And you didn't make it so that they couldn't sit in the part of the room that they felt was necessary to sit in. I had a teacher who specifically had his desk positioned, like you all sat in American classrooms and classrooms in Europe and everything, where the teacher's desk is in, the front of the classroom, and the students' desks all face it, and the chalkboard is behind, and, the door might be off to the side and everything. And everything is all squared away, neat and tidy. Not in this room. Right? In this room, the teacher's desk was in the corner. And you couldn't walk behind him. It was just in a position to not have any direction that somebody could approach where he wouldn't be able to see, but it was also just close enough to the door that if somebody came in that door that shouldn't be there, he could get to them before they got to us. There was never any kind of shooting or anything at my school, but if there had been, the minute that person tried to go into that classroom, that would have been a dead shooter.
Mm-hmm.
Gun or not. And we all knew it. Like, we sat in that classroom knowing that we were the most protected kids in that school at that moment. But we also knew that our teacher sat like that, positioned himself like that, because his experiences made it impossible for him to have people out of his line of vision close enough to him that he would have been vulnerable to them without having the holy fucking yucky spider heebie-jeebies the whole time.
Mm.
Right. So yeah, but back to the discussion about this particular war and the connections that go to the Hunter Biden laptop and the Hunter Biden controversy and the Joe Biden pardon of Hunter Biden for the last 10 years. So we've confirmed here, Tulsi Gabbard sort of sounded the alarm. There were other people also sounding an alarm. Tulsi Gabbard wasn't the first person to talk about this. She was just the one that got called a Russian asset for talking about it. Before, I don't think that anybody else was getting called that except for Trump. And then we had this confirmation, right, that there were definitely analysis of bioweapons taking place. Right. Moscow, it says, has claimed that secret American biological warfare labs in Ukraine were a justification. All right. God, I hate these sites that do this. I just want to read the news article. Come on. Moscow has claimed that secret American biological warfare labs in Ukraine were justification for its unprovoked invasion of the neighboring country last month. So it cited these labs as one of the reasons why it invaded. So we keep hearing, Russia didn't have anything, except they thought there were bioweapons labs that, there were. U.S. President Joe Biden himself was involved in the creation of biolaboratories in Ukraine. Russia's State Duma Speaker, Vyacheslav, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, Volodin said, according to state media. We're going to skip the picture of the
Thank you.
What is it, Zoolander imitation there. But yeah. An investment fund run by his son, they spelled it wrong, Hunter Biden, it's different language, right? Hunter Biden funded research and the implementation of the United States military biological program. It is obvious that Joe Biden, as his father and head of state, was aware of that activity. Volodin continued demanding a U.S. congressional investigation and a White House explanation, which at that time didn't end up happening either. No investigation, no explanation, right? But there was a lot of denial. Oh no, there was no involvement in the funding. There was none of that. None of that occurred. Except, where was it? I'm gonna look here farther, because I think it's actually in this one. Except Rosemont Seneca Technology Partners invested $500,000 in the San Francisco pathogen research company Metabiota, and raised millions more through firms that included Goldman Sachs. According to the emails found on the computer, Hunter introduced Metabiota two officials at Burisma. All the stuff we've been talking about, right? The Ukrainian gas company, where he was a board member for a science project involving biolabs in Ukraine, the emails show.
Was he a test subject?
Well, he did have a bit of a experience with chemistry.
Mm-hmm.
So here we are. Right. There you have it. The line goes, Hunter Biden getting involved with Burisma. Well, the line goes from Obama's administration installing Zelensky at around the time that all of this involvement of Hunter Biden with Burisma was taking place, through Joe Biden's influence peddling in Ukraine and China using his son, through Hunter Biden's involvement with Burisma, Joe Biden putting the kibosh to an investigation into corruption at Burisma, to Burisma being used as the location of the introduction Hunter Biden made, the brokering that he did between one of his U.S. shell companies and officials for this lab. This totally not a bioweapons lab that was investigating biological weapons, to Russia invading Ukraine.
Pinky swear.
Yeah, well, yeah, totally not, any connection there at all, guys. Nope, had absolutely nothing to do with Joe Biden's influence peddling. The war in Ukraine was organic, happened because Russia's bad. Totally. Men haven't been dying in Ukraine for 3 years because Joe Biden wanted to make a few $1 million. Totally. Didn't happen.
God. I don't know how much winning it's gonna take to have to make me be able to swallow all of the garbage that we just went through. And not even that we went through, it's just the disgusting dirtiness that was the Biden administration, all the nasty, dirty fucking details.
Yeah.
I need more winning. I need more winning now.
Yeah. So we're looking here. This is a Defense Department fact sheet that was published in. Let me see if I can find the. I have another iteration of this, and I thought I had the date. All right, I'm gonna copy that and see if I can actually see it. This is annoying. Well, okay. I think I actually still have. Well, it was 2022. Let's scroll back. I'm looking at it's in the URL. That's where it is. And of course it is because it's military. And it was March 11th, 2022. So this is not like the article that we just looked at. Again, we'll go back to the top of the screen and take a look here. That's March 26th, right? So March 11th, oops, wrong page. This fact sheet is published. Let me see if I've got the right thing here, actually. Go back up to the... Yeah, this is at the top. So the Department of Defense, CTR, has maintained its relationship with Ukraine. I do not want AI hide for this document. There we go. I just want to use the damn scroll bar to move this over. Right? In its relationship with Ukraine through the present day, Ukraine uses the laboratory improvements provided by the United States and other partners to support broader public veterinary health goals, such as monitoring the spread of COVID-19, preparing for and controlling African swine fever, which helped Ukrainian farmers protect their herds from infectious diseases, blah, blah, blah. So they have a set of reasons they're giving for why these labs are totally okay in their eyes. Right? And they've linked it to agriculture and so on. Scientists are encouraged to publish their research results, partner with international colleagues, widely distribute their research and public health findings. So they're giving all these alleged benefits. And this is the part that I had open in the other page here. Russia illegally took possession of 2 Ukrainian-owned laboratories that BTRP upgraded in 2014 and continues to deny Ukrainian access to these facilities. After Russia launched its unlawful invasion of Ukraine, the Ukrainian Ministry of Health responsibly ordered safe and secure disposal of samples. The actions limit the danger of accidental release of pathogens should Russia's military attack laboratories, a real concern since they have attacked Ukraine's nuclear power plants and research facilities. So what Gabbard had said was vindicated by this. And like Russia seized these in prior to March, and then we go back to the AP story. In October is when they asked the UN to investigate. So they had access where they could have gotten evidence, and then they asked the UN to investigate. And all that the DoD did was call it disinformation. On a daily basis, Russia propagates disinformation aimed at BTRP's laboratory and capacity building efforts in former Soviet Union countries, falsely claiming that the U.S. Department of Defense support is used to develop biological weapons. Unlike Russia, the United States and Ukraine are not developing biological weapons or are in full compliance with the Biological Weapons Convention. And I just have this in the back of my head is this guy coughing bullshit.
Yeah. He pinky swear.
Yeah.
God damn.
So out comes this article on March 1st, right? We're still in March. We're jumping back and forth in time a little bit here. Ukraine state prosecutor says Biden is to blame. Yes. So we go up here, the actual headline. Did Joe Biden just start a world war to bury the Burisma scandal? So we look here, and we have some little bits of information that might agree. And this, by the way, is the Finance Joint Report that came out in 2020. So it talks about Biden meeting with his son's business partner, Devon Archer, at the White House. And then 5 days later, Biden visits Ukraine, and soon after, he is described as a public face the administration's handling in Ukraine. Day after that visit, Archer joins the board of Burisma. 6 days later, British officials seize $23 million from the London bank assets of Burisma's owner. 14 days after that, Hunter Biden joins the board of Burisma, and over the course of the next several years, these two were paid millions of dollars for their participation on the board by a Ukrainian oligarch. Right? In 2014, that's also when the protests brought about the change of leadership. So Zlochevsky is out. He had been highlighting what was going on at Burisma, but of course Zelensky did nothing about this. The chairman's investigation into potential conflicts of interest began in August 2019 with Chairman Grassley's letter to the Department of Treasury regarding potential conflicts of interest with respect to the Obama administration's policy. Then you had, farther down here, you have the China connection again. China-based investment firm with established ties to the Chinese government.
Well, so you know how I don't know about we think that there's someone else behind, or was someone else behind the Biden administration, right? It wasn't Joe Biden,
right,
pulling the strings, right? Who are the people behind Zelensky?
Well, Obama,
I don't know. It's
but
but
it's actually the same people that are behind the Biden administration and were behind the Obama administration. Like, everybody thinks, everybody that is right wing or gets called right wing that has objections to what happened during the Obama administration gets treated like they think Obama's the devil, and they sort of act like they think Obama's the devil. But the reality is that I don't think the man was in charge when he was in that position either. I'm not sure anybody in that position has been in charge in decades.
Yeah, no, of course not. But I mean, who is this oligarch? Who is the guy? Like, I don't know. I'm probably just going off on a tangent here, but I usually tend to do.
I mean, bookmarked an article about him. I don't know if I still do. Let me see.
I mean, it's clear that Ukraine is, for the U.S. interest, is a money laundering scheme, right? Like that's the I don't know if it's the only. I don't think it's the only thing that we're doing over there, but money laundering is definitely one of the main reasons why we are protecting them in the way that we are.
Yeah. let's see here. So let's look. There's actually more than one. But so there's in Romania. A Romanian businessman involved in high-profile corruption prosecution in Romania, Gabriel, let's see if I can pronounce this right, Popov Issue. It's Popoviciu, so I think it's Issue. Was paying them. Then we have in China, same bank account, Chinese company, Energy HK Limited, which was actually run by the CCP. Then the chairman of the CEFC, which I believe that's Chinese Energy. Again, it was paying them in Kazakhstan. Sorry, there's a Kazakhstani oligarch using his Singaporean entity to wire Hunter Biden's Rosemont Seneca entities hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Where does their money come from? That's
that
what
was Kenis Rajikev. Then we have in Ukraine, Mykola Zhlodzevsky was the oligarch there, Burisma owner. Zhlodzevsky. I hate these names. It's really bad. Zhlodzevsky essentially bribed Ukrainian officials, gave the Biden family $6.5 million. Then we have in Russia, a Russian oligarch and Russia's richest woman, Yelena Baturina, also sending millions to Rosemont Seneca. So I mean, there was like all these different names. So they were getting money everywhere. They got money from everywhere.
I'm just beyond curious as to where they got their money from and why these people. I mean, obviously, power comes with money, you know. So, but where their money came from is beyond interesting to me. I wish I had enough time to do that kind of a deep dive or really care at this point, you know, because it's just. You know, yes, there are important things to discuss about what transpired down there, what is transpiring over there. I don't know how much attention span the American public has for it, or that we really need to have right now, because again,
there's a degree to which we have to, and it's like the bottom line for me is this: I mean, all this shady shit, that it in and of itself, it's not that it's not our business; it's that it's not necessarily a men's issue, because their men and women are shady, right? What makes it a men's issue is that all of this, all of the network of shell companies and the influence peddling between the Biden family and Ukraine, the Biden family in China, the Biden family in Russia, the Biden family in Romania. By the way, everything that Andrew Tate's accused of, there's evidence on that laptop that Hunter Biden was guilty of it. But everything, right? In Romania. But nobody went after him for it. But yeah, all of this leads to maneuvering between the countries, Russia taking things happening in Ukraine as a threat to its people and its borders, and a war starting, And how many men have died in Ukraine as a result of this war? Right? How many times have we been told in the United States that the money that you make from your labor and that men make from their labor, and since our taxpayers are mostly men, is going to be confiscated and sent to fuel this murder machine? These men are dying, and our men are funding it. Every penny the Biden crime family has extracted through influence peddling from leaders and oligarchs around the world has been laundered in the blood of men. And then we saw this mention, like in the, as I mentioned before, with regard to Ukraine and China, Rosemont Seneca was used as for part of that, right? BHR, Bokai Harvest RST, which is the investment fund involved in the Hennings transaction in China with the Chinese energy company. And remember, we looked at a couple weeks ago, China was actually involved in sort of behind the scenes supporting Russia against Ukraine, and they also were trying to promote a means of implementing their social credit system all around the world. That was connected to this. So you have this investment fund was formed by a merger between the Chinese government-linked firm Bohai Capital and a company named Rosemont Seneca, which I just mentioned a few minutes ago in regard to Ukraine. So this is they're using the same shell companies. They were using the same shell companies to do all of this. And as we see here, the Obama administration knew that Hunter Biden's position on Burisma's board was problematic and did interfere with the efficient execution of policy with respect to Ukraine. The administration ignored glaring warning signs when the vice president's son joined the board of the company owned by a corrupt Ukrainian oligarch. We have a bunch of key findings here in this particular investigation that I'm not going through all of this, but again, if you look, this is linked in the low bar. If you look at it, it's the one that is titled Finance Joint Report. I don't know if I actually put that in the title, but let's see if I can get through where it tells me that it's a. I hate that it has to tell me that it's a stupid Chrome extension. I already know that to read this. But let's see. It is a nonsensical word there as the... Okay. Well, that sucks. Fade, F-A-I-D, N, BMN, N-N. And you'll, if you see that in the link, that's the one I'm reading from, looking at right now. But it's the HSGAC Finance Joint Report, released in 2020. And, this contains the old news of, shutting the case against Burisma and everything, right? Hunter Biden having Secret Service protection. The Democrat firm that basically used a Russian asset, if I understand right, to spread disinformation about this all being disinformation. Let me scroll back down to the bottom. Dang it. There we go. I want it actually above our heads on the screen. There we go. Yeah, there's the where I wanted to make sure I showed the receipt for me saying the Andrew Tate stuff. So Hunter Biden paid non-resident women who were nationals of Russia or other Eastern European countries and who appear to be linked to an Eastern European prostitution or human trafficking ring. So that's where, I said he was guilty of what Andrew Tate's accused of. This is the receipt for that. This is actually from a U.S. government source. But that doesn't necessarily discredit it. It's from a U.S. government source that investigated his laptop. So back to, did Joe Biden start a world war to bury the Burisma scandal? And in this article we see Burisma jacked up their energy prices as soon as the war started, which you can argue that it's harder to run a utility in a circumstance where a lot of the men have been drafted and there's need to protect the facility and so on. But this is kind of interesting. Parliament jacked up the prices. And there are two videos that I'm not going to play that if you get a chance to, this is the shakya.com link. You can actually see, you watch the video, and I think they're both the same video actually, but you watch the video, they go right through the process of explaining a great deal of the corruption. But just as the war between the Ukrainian state between Ukraine and Russia began, the Ukrainian State Prosecutor's Office in Kiev had begun to issue arrest warrants for those sought to exploit the Ukrainian people through fraud and intimidation. This was right after the jacked up prices. Ukrainian police and Interpol authorities have audited Burisma Holdings Ltd. In Cyprus for some months. The breakout of war, however, has posed a problem in continuing these investigations. However, the United States Prosecutor's Office in Kiev lays out the facts of the Burisma scandal, plus introduces key witnesses and whistleblowers. And as you can see, there's a bit of a travel here. And let's see if we can get this to open so that it's not tiny. Oh, there we go. Now it's opening. No, it's not. It goes to the stupid video. Again. But it's the connections that we talked about before. So the owner, whose name is difficult to pronounce, and I'm not going to say it again, through the Commercial Bank of Ukraine, and the organizations that were sort of the funding and finance organizations for Burisma. And then you have the involvement of Rosemont Seneca, right? Devin Archer, Hunter Biden, and Joe Biden. You have a sort of a direct connection there that they've made. And then you also have Citibank, and I really want to see this name in larger format. I wonder if I can... No. When I increase the size, it shrinks. But yeah, thousands of fake invoices were billed to Burisma Holdings. I'm actually going to look again, because I'm sure I can get up close there. Open this in a new tab and see if it shows better. Nope, it's still going to take me to that video. Now, come on. So, I'm going to actually use the Scissors app if I can get it to open. Got too much shit on my computer open again, and this thing is actually taking up a lot of memory opening up. We'll let it go for a minute and see if it does show that image. In the meantime, I guess I will just continue. After ratifying the Burisma energy bill by 100% votes with a 100% hike of energy costs, can you imagine if your electric bill doubled overnight, by the way?
I would scream.
Yeah. Costs Petro Poroshenko, the then president
Wait, is
of
it not
Ukraine.
normal for your electric bill to double overnight?
No.
Oh,
Yeah.
I need to contact my local representative.
Yeah, it is not normal for your electric bill to double overnight. If it does, something has gone wrong. And let me see if this is the same. It's still not coming up. This video player that this site uses is really clunky. But they couldn't put the video on YouTube and just put a YouTube link because YouTube was deleting everything related to this, even when it didn't come from the Biden laptop. They were calling it all disinformation, even investigations that were actually taking place and were documented and such. That was disinformation back then. You know, because disinformation discredits the term disinformation discredits everything, right? So, all right, now I finally got the snip and stitch to come up. Let me see if I can. Sometimes if you snip something close up, yeah, but it's not working. Fine, it'll increase the size of it. I just want to see the name, because I can't remember it off the top of my head. I believe this is the link to... They have this video linked repeatedly. A video of an interview that took place where... and I think we may have showed some of this on the show before. A couple of guys talked about the money laundering campaign that was taking place. I don't know if yeah, you can sort of see this right here. I haven't got it set up to show my little cursor. I thought I did, but the face in the video there, that video, there are several parts of that video that are, I think, time stamped and linked in different parts of this article. They discussed these with these guys what their services were to Hunter Biden. Their job was basically the formation of some of those shell companies that were used to launder money and facilitating the transactions between Mr. Unpronounceable and the Biden family. So
I like that name.
Mr. Unpronounceable.
Yes.
I stole it from that movie about Mr. Kellogg and his The Road to Wellville. They had a guy whose name was difficult to pronounce, and I think he said it once in the movie, and the rest of the movie they called him Mr. Unpronounceable. Thalanox, no, it's not that the browser is loading multiple copies of the same vid. It's that different, like, as you scroll down through this article, like, here's the first link for the video, and it's linked to the beginning. This is linked to a timestamp later in the video. This appears to be also linked to a timestamp later in the video. This is linked to a timestamp later, I think, in the same video. Because I remember watching this video, and these things were all shown in it. So, so it's not... It's the same video, but it's got multiple links there. Right? But, man, that's really clunky. Like, the snip and stitch is open, but it won't actually function right now. So, that's bizarre. So I'm just going to close, and it did open, I think, twice here. Here's where it opened it to the beginning, and I'm wondering, and it's buffered. I've got several minutes buffered, but it's not in English, so it's all subtitled. And it's very clunky, so if... Yeah.
украинцы платят на треть выше
And a lot of
коммунальные
this is
тарифы.
basically about how Ukrainians got ripped off by all of this. But
Вы принимали в этом участие?
yeah, see, here's where they're talking to the guy in the mask.
Добрый день. На видео, которое мы сейчас опубликуем, свидетели подтверждают и детально описывают коррупционную схему отмывания украденных Злачевским у украинцев миллионов долларов.
Ukrainians with the
Последующим выводом этих миллионов на счета фирмы
money
Burisma.
stolen from Ukrainians
Кроме
with the
видео, мы
subsequent
обнародуем
withdrawal of these
заявление одного
millions
из
to the accounts
свидетелей
of
в правоохранительные органы Украины, в котором изложены данные факты. С последующим выводом этих миллионов на счета фирмы
belonging to the
Burisma.
Bidens. In
Кроме
addition
видео,
to the
мы
video, we
обнародуем
will publish
заявление
a
одного из
statement
свидетелей в
filed by one of the
правоохранительные органы Украины,
witnesses
в
to the law
котором
enforcement
изложены данные
agencies of
факты.
Ukraine, which outlines
Предлагаю
the mentioned
посмотреть видео.
facts. I suggest
Добрый день,
watching the
меня зовут
video,
Константин
and
Кулик.
then they talked to these
Сегодня мы
two
общаемся
guys
с двумя
on the
новыми
right here
свидетелями, которые
extensively.
имели отношение к незаконной
And you
деятельности
can see,
Николая
like, the one
Злачевского.
guy's totally
Оба
blurred out
свидетеля
for his
не
own
имели
protection. The
до
other guy's in a
беседы со мной
mask and
консультации с
somewhat
адвокатом,
blurred.
присутствующим,
And
и понимаю, что заключили.
let's see, as they're talking, you can see he's got the cap on, he keeps his head down. They're very much concerned about their safety because of the things that they're revealing.
Выступал, вернее, его доверенное лицо. В Украине Николай Злачевский имел очень много неучтенного нала.
If I can find the timestamp, the timestamp for the tough part is if I open the timestamp for the part that we were looking at as a separate thing, it'll just keep loading and loading. And this is an hour-long video, so I'm not going to try to do that. It's just a pain in the butt. It won't even jump very easily. But let's see if now that I've closed that, I can actually get this to work. So I can't believe how tiny that comes up. That's crazy. Will it let me actually snip now? I feel like I sound like a veterinarian. Anyway, what we have demonstrated here, and I think it's pretty... Yeah, they should have edited his voice. That's Zionism, Feminism, and the Thin Blue Line says they should have edited his voice. And you can... There is such a thing as a voice print. You can identify somebody by their voice just the same as you can identify somebody by their fingerprints, if the recording is decent. Right? But... so annoying. Like, I can read the Alexander part. It's the last name that I'm having difficulty reading, and the actual name of his organization. And I'm trying to trigger a memory from when I was going over this before that would, give me a bit of a... What was I going to talk about with regard to this guy? But I definitely had something I was going to say about him, and now I can't remember what it was. But in any case, you can see, like, this was a separate involvement. This wasn't necessarily fully connected to the American end of it. But in the meantime, you had Poroshenko, and you had Biden and his family, and Citibank all making money from this huge hike, this huge price hike. Right? So all of this takes place at the same time as Hunter Biden is using Burisma as the location to introduce the contact that is funding the biolabs to his contact for his shell company to launder that money. So the whole thing all ends up being connected. And now you sort of have a better understanding of why Joe Biden fought so hard to keep Burisma from being investigated. Like, can't have an investigation, right? If you have an investigation, then this activity will be exposed. And it might, not only might it have to stop, but it would actually implicate the office of the Vice President of the United States. So, all of this which was taking place, the money laundering, the shell companies, the interaction between the oligarchs and the Biden administration through Hunter Biden, it all goes back to that situation of, Russia has concerns about these labs, and after illegal seizure of one of them, after the country got a chance to go in and look and see what's in this lab, what's going on in this lab, that's when they made the allegations. And of course, soon after the war started, and why on earth? All my tabs just closed.
You can't hear.
You have to, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay.
That's insane.
My
You
computer
had too many
froze.
tabs. Let this be a lesson.
I had half of the tabs open that I usually have open. But it's alright, because I had pretty much concluded everything I was going to talk about in regard to this. But now I can't close the last tab. And this is really weird. It's, like, all of a sudden, like, I start talking about this stuff, and all of a sudden my computer gets completely overloaded, and I can't do anything. So we'll just close that tab too.
We need that X Files sound drop.
Yeah. So yeah. Now I'm not screen sharing anymore in Discord, because I just closed Chrome entirely. But from what you guys can see, what we've talked about and everything, yeah, Death to Zionism, Feminism, and the Thin Blue Line says, they're trying to sabotage you, and Thalanok says, can't rule things out. Somewhere along the line, I want to say it's the video thing that I had open. That is such a clunky piece of shit application that it was eating up memory. And, I don't know, let's see if, like, OBS is taking up a lot of memory right now. But yeah, Chrome, I closed Chrome, and Chrome is still eating a shitload of memory right now. So it might be that did it, was that stupid video. All because you can't just put that stuff on YouTube. So in the meantime, let's see. We have one super chow from Meredith G, who gave us $5 and said, HBR Talk 340, honey for the badgers. I believe that there is a tracking site on the amount of contribution that politicians receive in contributions from different corporate donors. It kind of explains so much about the BS we see today. And yeah, that's another thing. Like, what we're talking about, I think a lot of the reason why it went under the radar in government for so long is because it's not abnormal for politicians to get shitloads of money from different countries in this way. This is what Biden was doing, was pretty common in Congress. And this is the type of stuff that it ends up being the cause behind the United States military sending U.S. boys, U.S. men, young men, to war in foreign countries. So that pardon that covered up 10 years worth of stuff, covered up the use of shell companies in a foreign country for money laundering, in being involved in not just the influence peddling that was taking place, but maneuverings between companies in Ukraine that provided one of the causes, one of the reasons why the Russia attack on Ukraine occurred. So it was directly related. Hunter Biden's activities in Ukraine partially caused the war. And with that, we conclude our dig through the trenches and the mud of the Biden family, and I hope we never have to talk about them again.
Please.
Or
Please,
hear their
please.
voices ever again.
Yeah,
Oh,
hearing their
that's
voices
gonna
I don't want to do that either.
No, I don't. It's gonna happen, though. It's gonna happen.
Yeah, unfortunately, we'll probably hear... If we don't hear their voices, we'll hear the voices of their supporters.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it's... The worst part of all of this is, you know, unless we see the results that a lot of us were looking for when we voted for Trump this time around, where, you know, there's actual shrinking of government, where DOJ goes through and streamlines things, and they actually make some changes to policies that are allowing corruption to set in. This is going to happen again, because the United States has a history of doing this. We may have a couple of things we'll discuss in future shows in between now and my planned discussion on Iran. But when I say the United States has a history of doing this, when we start digging into the U.S. history in Iran, you will understand what I'm talking about. But with that, I think we have pretty much killed the whole Ukraine story at this point. So, thanks you guys for slogging through this with me. I told you it was going to be weird. And thanks everybody for listening and tolerating the politics, because I know not everybody likes the Democrat-Republican politics, but you know, when it comes to why are we going to war, why are we sending boys overseas, why do we have our CIA involved? Because remember, our CIA was recruiting fighters for this war from Afghanistan, of all things. Right? Why is all this happening? Because Hunter got high. Because Hunter got paid. Because Joe Biden got paid. You know, what were you saying?
I was singing the because I got high
Because
song.
I got high.
Yes.
I had to get up and go to work, but then I got high. What does Hunter actually do? Can we... Sorry, it's the end of the show. Let's not get into it.
I will say this.
He paints canvases with his fecal material and calls it art and sells it for $500,000 a pop.
Because he got high.
And then they all burn up in the California fire. Just no, you know, just a coincidence, guys. Just a coincidence. But yeah. So the the reference there, Afro Man. I actually have sitting in my kitchen a it's a box mix. It's not for a real cake, like not for a real homemade cake, right? It's a box mix for a lemon pound cake. Specifically because Ohio is currently in the process of determining whether to remove what's it called? Qualified immunity. Right. I got told about this because there are people that worry about my profession. If I give somebody CPR and I break a rib in the process, because of what I do, it's I'm protected from lawsuits as long as I did things the way I should have done them, which you know, that's qualified immunity, and I'm happy to give that up if it means that somebody, you know, in law enforcement can't break into the wrong person's house and do a bunch of damage, or break in on trumped up charges and do a bunch of damage, and then leave them with the bill. And there have been instances where they've swatted the wrong house, and somebody has died. So, and then, oh well, qualified immunity. Sorry, sucks to be you. Like that has to go. So I'm waiting, yeah. And I will absolutely celebrate with a lemon pound cake. And if you do not understand what that means, listeners, look up Afro Man and lemon pound cake, and you will understand. And once you start reading about it and then listening to the lyrics of the album that he released to raise money to pay for the damage to his house, that's just like, yeah. I hate corruption in government. I really do.
My entire government is cake. I know this for a fact. I've put a knife through them, and I have seen for myself that they are merely cake. Please save us.
No.
From our government, they are just cake.
That's not possible. I have it on good authority that knives are illegal in your country.
Yeah.
I had to use a machete because it doesn't have a pointed end.
You could carry a machete around because it doesn't have a pointed end. Is that true?
That's what Idris Elba has been talking about. You can sell kitchen knives without a pointed end, and I'm like, cleavers exist. Fucking machetes exist. They don't have a pointed end.
When I was a witch, I was a kitchen witch. Most witches' athames have a pointed end. My athame was a meat cleaver.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, because it's a lot easier to cut up the chicken for chicken soup with a meat cleaver. So if you're doing a healing spell, you're making that chicken soup, you want to be able to chop up that chicken, unless you're shredding it with forks. But, in any case, yeah.
You can kill someone with a knife. You can kill someone with a rock, not even a sharpened rock, just a rock. And
true.
It will soon become illegal to be in possession of a rock in the UK. That sounds like satire, but it will soon be true. I mean, why wouldn't it? I mean, you just ban all the guns and you'll solve all your problems. Yeah, all right, we'll ban all the guns. That'll solve it. Oh shit, there was the stabbing shit. Let's ban all the knives. Ban all the knives. Well, oh shit, people are still killing each other with rocks. Let's ban all the rocks. That's literally how it's playing out.
Yeah, the problem is that there are literally thousands of things in people's homes, little things, that if used outside of the purpose for which they were created, if used improperly, if used carelessly, or if deliberately adulterated in order to cause harm, they can cause harm, right? And I'm not just talking about stuff like don't stick a fork in a power outlet, right? There are ingredients in your cleaning supplies that if you mix them together and try to make a stronger cleaning supply, you can accidentally kill yourself in your bathroom trying to scrub out your bathtub, right? And there are things in your home that if you decided to fuck around and find out and mix them together, you could set your house on fire with chemicals. You have every person probably after the COVID crisis has at least one volatile chemical in their home that is highly flammable, highly reactive, evaporates into the air, starts evaporating into the air as soon as the bottle is open, and can create a flammable vapor. It's not really healthy to breathe it in, but you smell it as soon as you open the bottle, and you use it to sanitize everything. And I'm not talking about bleach, right? It's one of the most harmless things in your medicine cabinet as long as you use it correctly. But isopropyl alcohol, when misused and mixed with certain other things, is extremely dangerous, right? It's one of the reasons why, if you work in a cleaning environment, like I've worked in retail, I've worked in food service, and I currently work in healthcare. In all three environments, one of the things they tell you if you have to do cleaning in that environment is that when you open a bottle of chemical, some kind of chemical to use for cleaning, stuff that you just can go to the grocery store and buy, you open that and you use it as is. You do not mix it with something else. You do not have a degree in chemistry. You don't know what you're doing. You could kill everybody in the vicinity if you mix the wrong couple things together. Right? And just the effects that can happen from mixing an acid and a base together can be very dangerous. So, I've had that kind of, don't mess with this stuff training, and they're very, very adamant about nothing gets mixed unless we tell you to mix it. Right? So, the idea that you could eliminate everything in people's households that can cause damage and do harm to their friends and family or their neighbors, or if they wanted to use it in an attack, it's just bullshit. You cannot
anything heavy.
The world.
Literally anything heavy. You could rip the TV off the wall and smash it over someone's head.
It doesn't even have to be anything heavy. You can knock someone over and their head hit a coffee table at the wrong angle and snap their fucking neck. Like, it's literally is that easy.
Yeah.
It does not require the use of an outside object other than the physical force of your body and physics.
One of the first guys that I saw wrongly prosecuted for domestic violence when he was the victim of domestic violence, his girlfriend broke into his apartment. He came home and she was there. She attacked him. And now, you have to understand, this man was a foot plus taller than this girl. And he was, I wouldn't say like bodybuilder built, but he was a big guy. He was at least 6 inches taller than me. Big guy, broad shoulders, big muscular arms. And this chick was tiny, and he was afraid to even restrain her because he did know his own strength, but he was in a moment of panic because he was being attacked, and she went after him like a wildcat. So he just defended his vulnerable areas and, got down in the kind of the tornado position, like with where you're crouched on the floor and your head's down and your hands are over it. And she grabbed an old-fashioned blown glass paperweight that was a family heirloom of his, like his grandfather or his great-grandfather or somebody had made this. And it was heavy, slightly larger than her hand, just big enough that it was hard for her to palm it. And she bludgeoned him with it. Fractured his wrist and his skull with a piece of glass, with a paperweight. Not only was it not sharp, it was perfectly round and smooth except for the flat bottom. Right? There was no universe in which this thing was designed for aggression. It was designed to look pretty and keep the papers on your desk from blowing away if the windows are open.
Right.
So it's like, it just drives me nuts when I hear people, let's get rid of this and get rid of that. Everybody will be safe. You can't use these things as weapons. You can use anything as a weapon.
Any fucking thing. All you gotta do is be creative. What do they say? There's 6 million ways to die. Choose one.
The second guy I know who was falsely accused of being a perpetrator of violence for defending himself against a person who was trying to harm him, got convicted of assault for trying to stop a woman's second attempt at stabbing him in the throat with a pencil. A wooden pencil. You know those number 2 lead pencils you used for tests when you were a kid? That's what she was using as a weapon.
Jesus.
Yeah, Bridget from the 7 Years in Hell story is a school teacher. One day she had to stop a fight in class when she was teaching in the Dayton public school system between two girls, one of whom was using the school-assigned tool for her math class, a metal ruler, as a knife. She didn't sharpen it. She just slashed the heck out of another girl with it, like death by paper cuts.
I don't know about you, but I haven't used a pencil in 25 years.
I have.
And yet apparently it's a murder weapon now. So we should ban pencils. I really hope the British government doesn't hear me saying that, because that's going to give them ideas. They're probably going to do that.
Yeah,
They're probably going to ban every object conceivable except foreigners.
I have a couple of these incredibly dangerous mechanical types, too. They're semi-automatic pencils.
Yes.
So I do puzzles sometimes because I like cryptograms. So I grew up doing those with my grandma. So it's just a nostalgia thing for me. And so I have this big book of cryptograms that I like to do. And I actually have a few of the other, like, I get the paper ones because there's something special about writing it down as opposed to, like, the ones that you can do on your phone and stuff. So I literally do have, I have semi-automatic pencils in my work bag.
Did y'all see that clip going around on X recently? This woman was explaining about how men like quests.
Yes.
Women like puzzles and men like quests.
Can't we do both?
We can absolutely do both. We can conduct a fucking civilization
why
where
I play Dungeons and Dragons.
women do puzzles and men do quests. Mm-hmm. But we happen to be in this civilization where we're like, no, men don't get to do anything. Not even a quest that involves making life better for women, because that's patriarchy or some shit. And women shouldn't have to do puzzles because that's misogyny. Women should have to do quests, and men should have to do puzzles. And men are like, we don't want to do puzzles, and women are like, we don't want to do quests. But no, we have to do the opposite of the thing you want to do, because that's progress.
Yeah. I mean, progress must progress. Harumph. But yeah, I got one more for you. So it's back to the 7 Years in Hell guy case, right? The second husband of the vexatious litigant in that case went up for 18 months for running past her to get out of the room where she was attacking him. She was using weapons against him and everything, and he got busted for his shoulder brushed up against her shoulder on the way out. And so that was an assault, right? Well, what was she doing? She was picking up, like, ceramic figures and trophies and paperweights and, all sorts of little objects from the shelves in that room and throwing them at him. And so basically she was trying to beat him in the head with a small weighted object known as a knick-knack.
I bet if you asked her response would be, "Oh, I wasn't doing anything."
Oh, no.
I didn't do anything.
She said she was doing it because she was afraid of him, and she was obviously right because he bumped into her on his way out of the room. Yeah, that's all it took to get him arrested, right? So, yeah, you can use a kitchen knife as a weapon. You can use a glass paperweight. You can kill someone with a knick-knack, paddywhack. Leave the dude alone. But yeah, and I'm laughing at this, but my personal experience in life is that if you are in a room where somebody has decided that they're going to become aggressive toward you, the best thing you can do is get away from all of the small objects, because that person is likely to grab something and hit you with it, or stick you with it. Or both. There are some items, you can actually knock someone out with the other end of a knife, depending on how heavy the handle is. Like my old meat cleaver, the handle on that thing was pretty thick and heavy. So, in any case, but that's our little lesson today on why it's a dumbass idea to pretend that if you just ban all of the things that can be used as weapons, you'll be safe. Because you can't get rid of everything that could be used as a weapon.
Mm-hmm.
But with that, I think we have dawdled long enough, and I'm going to call it a night. So thanks again, everybody, and good night. We will see you next Thursday. And next Thursday, we'll be talking about something else.
Men's rights activists are machines, dude. Okay? They are literal machines. They are talking point machines. They are impossible to fucking deal with, especially if you have like a couple dudes who have good memory on top of that too. Holy shit, you're fucked.